In the name of Lord Jesus Christ, I speak. Thank God now we are on 142. Yeah. Now, like what we mentioned earlier on, chapter 57, its background is also similar to the one stated in 142, right? So David was on the run. Now, I'm thinking, why is it that the whoever the person might be, who put all these sums together, why did he separate the two? If you know what I'm saying, one is like like almost in the, I think it's in the second book. Yeah, it's in the second book. You know what I'm saying, yeah? Now, because in the second book, we understand that this is like a message of deliverance, all right? Now, when we look at 142, is it not a psalm on deliverance as well? Why is it that the writer want to separate the two so far apart? Okay, now obviously it's something for you to think about as well. Yeah. Okay. Now, I guess when you look at this chapter, right? Like what I said before is when you look at it, like the first part is like there is no difference, to other parts, like to 57, right? Asking God for help, God, please listen to my voice. I pour out my complaint before him and declare before him my trouble. Okay. All right, now I guess this one also tells us a lot about his inner being at the time. All right, inner being. Remember, I told you to look at verse 7, because he said, ask the Lord to bring his soul out of prison. Now, we can also look at verse 3. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. In the way in which I walk, they have secretly set a snare for me. Okay, a snare for me. Okay, now that is his emotion at the time. All right, now I want to look at I'm going to split the chapter, verse 1 to verse 2, 3 to 4, and then 5 to 7. Okay, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and then 5 to 7. Okay, now, so you know that to me here, he was like quite agitated, in a way that he poured out not only his plea but also his complaint before God. Complaint before. I guess when the person is under, how can I say, such a is in such a circumstance, then obviously emotionally it must be very I would say confused, unsettled, and to some people it might be natural for him to utter complaints or whatever, right? So here he said, I pour out my complaint before him and I declare before him my trouble, right? Now it's like saying to God, and okay, now look, my spirit is overwhelmed, and look at what these people are doing. They have secretly set a snare for me. All right. Now, if you look at verse 4, this is what it said: look on my right hand and see, for there's no one who acknowledges me. Refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. All right. No, so it's like he was very lonely at the time, extremely lonely, right? And how can I say it's so sad, yeah. It's like no one really care for him. Now, how would you feel, when if you are in that situation, all right? Now, maybe we can just look at back to the book of First Samuel. We mentioned this before, but I think it's good to look at it again. Chapter 22. Because here it says that he escaped to the cave of Adullam, right? Adullam. So, he must be very lonely. You know why? Because his brothers and all his father's house heard it. They went down there to him. So probably, yes, there may be people who were with him. Now, you find that loneliness can appear in two different forms, if you know what I'm saying. Right? And one is you don't have anyone, right, by your side. It's like you. I think Chad has this experience when you are in the motel or whatever for 3 weeks. Yeah. And it's like you are being completely isolated. That is a kind of loneliness. Now, I think the second type of loneliness is you find that your heart is not able to connect to anyone. Right? There may be people around you, but you are in your own world. You know what I'm saying? It's like you are segregated, from people, even though they are so near to you. They're just by your side, but you are not there. And you are in your own world. All right. So I guess this is the kind of loneliness. Now, if you read Psalms, First Samuel chapter 22, the family members were there, and then what? And he had people to follow him as well. Yeah. Right. Okay. That was the situation. Okay. Now, so it seems, there is a kind of, the complaint can be quite clearly seen in verse 3 and verse 4. Yeah? And particularly verse 4, it says, refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. Right? It's like he was looking for like a refuge, but it's like he was not able to find. All right. Now he may think that he has found one, and yet it ends up that he still has to run. You know what I'm saying? From one place to another. Again, that was the situation, right? So that's why he cried out to God. Now I think the good thing is, to me, verse 5 is important. He said, I cried out to you, O Lord. I said, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Now, things might not have changed for the better, right? Things have changed tremendously, for the worse. Yeah. And yet, David was trained to hold on to God. I think this is what we need to do as well. When we pray to God, the situation that we are in may not have changed for the better. But the heart to count on God, must always be there, must be as strong as ever. Right? Now, so I guess this is so hard to do. And when you look at verse 5, he said, you are my refuge. It's not like in time of peace, he just simply uttered this. Now, it was in time of trouble, of desperation, and he uttered this out. Okay. Now, so I guess we all need to learn. Okay, now verse 6 and verse 7. So I attend to my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Okay, now, so he has been like, I guess, very low. The idea said very low mean what? mean it's like I have no way to escape, deliver me from my persecutor. Now, because they are stronger than I think this is very true. Now, okay, now verse 7, bring my soul out of prison. Right? It's like, two level of imprisonment. One is physically, and the other one is of the heart. Right? Now, when you look at verse 3 again, it said, when my spirit was overwhelmed within me. Now, when you look at the phrase was overwhelmed, what does it mean? If you look at your footnotes, fainted. That is what it means, fainted. Is it not? Overwhelmed. It's hard to describe, the reality of being overwhelmed. Now, I think fainted is a very good word. We can associate with, when someone is fainted. You know what I'm saying? Or the guy, he is knocked out completely, and he is knocked unconscious. That kind of thing. Okay. Now, so and this is the imprisonment of the soul. Now, and the imprisonment of the soul can only be, how can I say, the soul can only be set free by the power of God. It's not by man, definitely. By man we cannot do anything, so it has to come from God. Yeah. Now, so, and this is what he said, that I may praise your name, the righteous shall surround me, for you shall deal bountifully with me. Okay. Okay, you remember the verse I told you about, you have loosed my bonds. Remember that? Okay, I think that is pretty similar. All right, now we look at the Psalms 116. Okay, we look at Psalms 116. Verse 16, yeah. No, verse 16. Now, O Lord, truly I am your servant. I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. You have loosed my bones. Okay. Now, I think here we mentioned about is the inability to comprehend, what God has done, like by putting him in affliction, and he was very hasty in his words. Remember that? Verse 10 and verse 11, yeah. I believe, therefore I spoke, I'm greatly afflicted. I said in my haste, all men are liars. All men are liars. Okay. So you find that, in fact, time and again, in our life or in our ministry work, we need God, to set us free, from any form of trap, I would say, In fact, when you look at a person, when a person begins to, how can I say, behave not with wisdom, in his service to God, it's because the heart is not free, the mind is not free. Right? Now, when we see that, when we look at ourselves, we are not able to really translate, our own teachings into actions. Right? It means that our heart is not free. Our heart is not free. Okay. Now, I guess this is, something that we need to ask God, for help. All right. Now, to set us free, to set our soul, out of prison, to bring us our soul out of prison. Okay. Now, I think this is more like, we walk by faith, not by sight. We trust in God. So trust requires a great faith in God. So we'll go through this. We'll go through this, whether you like it or not, that's why we want God to really preserve our heart, so that we will not stray either left or right or whatever, to become, a burden to ourselves, that kind of thing. All right. Now, there's a chapter here. Now, I want to go on to the next one. Yeah, that is 143. Right. Now, again, this is a Psalm of David. It's similar because he's asking for deliverance. Yeah, asking God to guide him. Okay. Now, I just want you to to look at this, yeah, because this chapter to me is quite unique, because here it says, obviously you can see this in other chapters as well, but in this chapter, and like in verse 2, he says, I'm your servant, do not enter into judgment with your servant, yeah. Okay, now when you look at verse 12, yeah, again it's the same. In your mercy, cut off my enemies and destroy all those who afflict my soul, for I am your servant. Yeah. Now, so here you find that, he prayed to God, from the standpoints of being God's servant. Some of the psalms that he has written, he talk about the anointed, isn't it? He's the king, anointed by God. Well, I think this one again is quite it's quite different. It's quite different. Now, content-wise is almost identical because he asked for God's deliverance. Now, just to give you a bit of how can I say, background information, not based on other part of the psalm, but based on the content itself, or what is written in this chapter. Now, verse 3, for the enemy has persecuted my soul, he has crushed my life to the ground, he has made me dwell in darkness, let those who have long been dead. Okay, now that is the situation. That's why when you look at verse 4, it's similar to 142 verse 3, because my spirit overwhelmed within me. Can you see? My heart within me is distressed. And this is exactly, I wouldn't say exactly, identical to the previous chapter, verse 3. Okay. Okay, now, obviously, in this chapter, there are some highlight that David is talking about that we cannot find in other chapters. It's like he wanted God to do, works on him, not on others, right? This one is more like on himself, yeah. Now, from verse 7 all the way down to verse 11, okay? Verse 11. Okay, now I just want you to look at another similarity, all right? Now, verse 11, yeah? Revive me, O Lord, for your name's sake, for your righteousness' sake. Bring my soul out of trouble. Now, he mentioned this before, am I right? Yeah? Bring his soul out of prison. That is in verse 7 of the previous chapter. This one is bring my soul out of trouble. Now, so I guess, trouble can become a kind of prison, if you know what I'm saying. Right? All right, now we are going to divide the chapter. We're going to divide the chapter. Verse 1 to verse 6. Okay, verse 1 to verse 6. And then 7 to verse 12, just divide into two parts. Okay. 1 to 6 and 7 to 12. All right, now we are going to look at it, yeah? Each section. Now, so he's again, asked God to listen to his prayer. Now, he said, in your faithfulness, answer me, and in your righteousness. It gives us the idea that he did not just want God to fulfill his wish, yeah, not based on any standard, if you know what I'm saying. Sometimes we just ask God, please, this is my request, please, make it happen, that kind of thing. Now, I think you find that David is quite a different person altogether. Even though he was in a desperate situation, he asked God to answer him in his faithfulness and also in his righteousness. Meaning, answer him according to the standard of God, answer him according to how God wants to answer him, not according to his own will. But that is the idea that we can actually gather from this section of the scriptures here. Now, I guess this is so important, when sometimes when we pray, we should pray in a way that you want God's righteousness and standard to be demonstrated rather than for our own. You get what I'm saying? That's why even in his prayer, he tried to lose his own will. You know what I'm saying? And so that the will of God can be, can be seen and can be accepted. I guess this is so important. Even in the most difficult of circumstances, we should learn to pray in this manner. All right? God, please, you answer me, but according to your righteousness, according to your faithfulness, just like Jesus when he prayed, it's the same. You can present your request before God, but God may not want to answer your request, the way you want it to be. Right? Okay. Now, so I guess serving God is a lifelong thing, and we have to learn until the day we die. To be honest, every day is a new day to us. This experience may be important, but I don't think we can use experience to, how can I say, to be the base for us to serve God. And God's principle should be the base for us to serve God, rather. Okay, now verse 2. Do not enter into judgment with your servant, for in your sight no one living is righteous. All right? Okay, now, so it's like saying, he mentioned this, yeah. Why did he mention this? When you connect this with the next verse here, it seems to me that he is saying the judgment of God is in the form of allowing his persecutors to come after him, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Now, for in your sight, no one living is righteous, for the enemy has persecuted my soul and he has crushed my life to the ground. Right? Please do not allow that to happen. Right? It seems to me that, he is saying, God has chosen to allow his enemy to overwhelm him, Okay. I will also think in this way. Sometimes, yes, we may not be at fault in doing in doing a certain thing, but we receive a lot of judgment from others or whatever, and sometimes you realize that our reactions may not be appropriate. Okay, but we need to bear this in mind. Our inappropriate dealing with our enemies may cause God to enter into judgment with us. You know what I'm saying? Right? Yes, the guy has done wrong against us, but because of our reaction, which is not in line with the principle of God, and that actions of ours can become the basis for God to enter into judgment with us. All right? So it's never easy, it's never easy. That's why our mind must be very clear, and our focus on God, you must be very strong. Okay. Now, and verse 4, and therefore my spirit is overwhelmed within me, my heart within me is distressed. Okay. So it's like he ties in, God's judgment and to the persecution of his soul by his enemy. Right? That's the thing. All right. Now we look at verse 5 and verse 6 here. I remember the days of old, I meditate on all your works, I muse on the work of your hands. Right? I spread out my hands to you, my soul longs for you like a thirsty land. Now, so to me, it seems that he has changed his focus here. Now, instead of being so engrossed, or so, how can I say, being so into the problem, Now he tends to focus on the things of God. He said he meditated on all his works. I muse. The word muse means ponder, all right, on the work of your hands. How many of us can shift focus like this? When we are in trouble, can we just shift our focus? Okay, forget about the problem. Think about God's word. I think this is what we need to learn to do as well. Okay, when we shift our focus away from this, when we start thinking about God's ways or God's words, then our heart tends to become what? More settled. I think that is true, that's true. Okay, now verse 6, I spread out my hands to you, my soul longs for you like a thirsty land. So this, you just have to, how can I say, God, help. I think this is the understanding that David has, or experiences that he had gained, in his life. Okay, now we move on, from verse 7 to verse 12, Now, answer me speedily, O Lord, my spirit fails. Do not hide your face from me, lest I be like those who go down into the pit. Now, so again, you can see how desperate he was. Very, very desperate. It's like saying that if God does not come, then what happened? He would go down to the pit. That's it. That's the end of his life. Then we say he will die. He will die, basically. I'm not sure how many of us have gone through this also. Anyone? Oh God, I'm dying. Help me. Not yet. There was one time when I was in Africa, I contracted, some sort of pintu. So my body's swollen up and here in my face as well. And I said to myself, oh man, that time I'm only 34 years old. So I'm going to die now. Seriously, this the thought, came to my mind. I said, oh, can I make it home? I was in Kenya. I said, oh, can I make it home? And the next day I went to a private hospital. The guy took me there, one of the workers. So I saw the doctor. He said, what happened to you? Why is it your face, swollen up? I said in my heart, if I have known what has happened to myself, then I would not have come to you. So he gave me 2 injections. It's very expensive, 80 pounds. So, yeah, because nobody was there apart from a local worker. And it's like, apart from praying to God, it's like, I can't really call my family and tell, oh, I'm sick, can't do that. I said to myself, what am I going to do now? Well, that, of course, my experience cannot be compared to his, to the one of David. But I know the feeling, I've been, when you don't know what to do, and even the doctor do not know what kind of disease is that. I have to come back, to the UK and went to the hospital, and they said, after the investigation, the prognosis is that your liver is infected. So to go there for a whole year, more than 1 year, hospital. And you know what I did? They opened a hole here and cut 2 slices out. I tell you, after the anesthetic worn out, yeah, the pain is, when people said, how painful it is to go through an operation, then I know. I said, I know. What do you call that? When sometimes when your heart is having a problem, what do they call it? Angiogram. They do something like put some down for you. I did that as well. I'll tell you, the pain is not. That's why I can appreciate, those who have gone to the hospital and said how painful it was. I said, I understand. There was one time also in Africa, I came back and I started vomiting blood. And they said, oh, maybe his nose, what's that? You contracted tuberculosis. I said, what? Tuberculosis. And then later on, they found out that this kind of things, would not spread. You know what they did? They actually insert a tube all the way through my nose into my lung. And then knock me out first. And then we pull it out. I said, blood all over. Then I understand. I think it's important. I mentioned this to you because sometimes we don't understand the pain that, some of the members have gone through, especially when they've gone for operation or whatever. Even when we say pray for them, but we don't normally, how can I say? We are not able to associate ourselves, with their situation. But if you have been through that, then you know how difficult it is. But thank God anyway. All right. Well, now we look at verse 8. Yeah? Now, cause me to hear your loving kindness in the morning, for in you do I trust. Cause me to know the way in which I should walk, for I lift up my soul to you. I think this is so precious, verse 8, that this is how he managed to overcome, so many, hardship that he faced. Because the way he prayed, the sincerity that he has shown is so wonderful. It's between him and God, you don't have, just like sometimes we don't have to say anything to anyone. It's between us and God, right? But we need to establish this kind of relationship, right? Now, so cause me to hear your loving kindness in the morning. I'm wondering, how can you hear, right? If you are on the run or whatever, and if you're so, desperate, sometimes, we can hear when our heart is pondering over the word of God, then you can hear. That's the way to hear, And when we are down, we read the word of God, that kind of thing, that the word of God will speak to us. Now, and I think the second part is important as well. For in you do I trust, cause me to know the way in which I should walk. I think this is so precious to us. We do not want to make mistakes, in times of persecution or whatever, and we want to walk on the right path. You know what I'm saying? We do not want to sin. We do not want to react in a very negative way, and we do not want to, how can I say? We do not want to be affected, by what people have spoken against us. You can imagine David in the situation like, where is your God? You see this guy, he's dying, and you see his God is not on his side, all this kind of thing. Can really, dampen his zeal completely. Now, so I want to read verse 9 and verse 10. Deliver me, O Lord, from my enemies. In you I take shelter. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Your spirit is good. Lead me in the land of uprightness. Right? Now, I'm wondering how many of us, in time of difficulties, would want to know the will of God and to do God's will. And in most cases, I would say, God's will is different from what and how we want to settle, for example, a difficult situation. All right? It's always different. Because like what we said, we are always, reactionary, right? But God's will is always based on his principle. Now, for example, a persecutor, what would you want to do? You pray. The Bible said, pray for him. Yeah. But for us, what? We want to get rid of the guy. It's very different, is it not so? Yeah, very, very different. That's why here it said, teach me to do your will. To me, this is so precious. For you are my God. Now, the second statement tells us, why he prayed the way he did, because he knew that God is his God. Right? Now, your spirit is good. Lead me in the land of upright. He wanted to be led completely by the Spirit of God, to be far from, his own desire and his will to tackle the problems, all right? Now, so to me, verse 8 and verse 10, okay, or even verse 8 all the way to verse 10. I guess this is the paragraph or the section that we must not forget, right? All right, very precious. Okay, now verse 11 to verse 12. Now revive me, O Lord, for your name's sake, for your righteousness' sake. Bring my soul out of trouble. Again, and he's asking for revival is not based on his own needs, but rather based on the glory of God. Can you see how spiritual he was? Now, why do we want God to help us? Because we feel that we are being wrong. We feel bad. That's why God, please help me. Now, for David, it's different. It's different. I mean, yes, yeah. It's for your name's sake, right? Now, in your mercy, cut off my enemies and destroy all those who afflict my soul. For I am your servant. Yeah, it's for the sake of God's glory. Okay, right. Now we move on to the next chapter. Again, this is a psalm written by David, and the possible, the background, as far as I'm concerned, is again in 2 Samuel. This one is more like, some people say when he was running away from his son or whatever. But we do not know. Right? There is no mention of his running away or whatever. The next few is all about David, yeah, all the way to 147. Okay, now I want you to look at verse 8, yeah, one of the thing that you can look at now, whose mouth, sorry, verse 7, stretch out your hand from above, rescue me and deliver me out of great waters from the hands of foreigners. Okay, now whose mouth speaks lying words and whose right hand is a right hand of falsehood. Okay, that's the situation. Now, in fact, he does not just mention once, he mentioned at least 2 times. Now we read verse 11. Rescue me and deliver me from the hands of foreigners. Can you see? Yeah. And whose mouth speak lying words and whose right hand is a right hand of falsehood. Okay. Right now, so this is like the situation that he was in at the time. Okay. All right. Now, I just want you to understand this here. You know, for him to pray in this manner, okay, judging from this psalm, there is a very good reason for him to do that. Now, which is in verse, let me see, verse 12, yeah. Now, the reason for him to pray in this manner, so that our sons may be as plant grown up in their youth, that our daughters may be as pillars sculptured in palace style. Now, so meaning, you know, the David pray in this manner is because it's like he did not want their children, his children, or the people in the country, in the nation, to be adversely affected or influenced by falsehood. And can you see now why he prayed this way? You know, we should pray in such a way that our children, and especially the church, everyone can grow up in the truth. That is what we want to see. Okay, now we do not want anyone to be affected by falsehood, and this is something that you can pray to God yourself. I pray that God, please make sure that I work in your righteousness, I can function in your truth, and also please help the church so that the children in the church, the brother and sister in the church, can grow up, yeah, in your words. That's the kind of prayer that David has offered. Right now, you find that his thinking is always beyond himself. So it's not just about himself. It's about others. Okay, now these are some of the highlights that we can see. Right now, I want to divide the chapter. All right, divide the chapter into 3 parts. Yeah, 1 to 2, 3 to 8, and 9 all the way down to 15. Okay, 1 to 2, 3 to 8, and 9 to 15. Okay, now we're going to look at it. He said, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hand for war and my fingers for battle, my loving kindness and my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer, my shield and the one in whom I take refuge, who subdue my people under me." Now, when you look at this 2 verses, it seems to suggest that, when David first came into power, to rule over all Israel. Okay, and this is like in 2 Samuel chapter 5. Okay, now just quickly turn to that. I just want to point out some of the facts that you can look at. Now, for example, when you look at from verse 1 to verse 5, it talks about how God has covenanted with David to look after his people. All right, now when you read from verse 6, it talks about the various conquests that he has done in Jerusalem. Okay, now when you look at verse what is that, verse 12, yeah, and this verse I think is reflected in the first part of 144. You know why? Because here it talks about David's mindset. So David knew that the Lord had established him as king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. Yeah. Now, so when you look at 144, and that's why he said, "What? You have trained me, to battle, you whatever, to do. You are the one who has what? You are my shield, and you are You are the one in whom I would take refuge. Right? And you subdue my people under me. That is it seems that, what he's saying, points to 2 Samuel 5. Maybe that is only the beginning part. But as you read on, you talk about trouble again, falsehood, yeah, and that is not in chapter 5 of 2 Samuel. You get what I'm saying? Hello, is that clear? Chat, is that okay? Okay. Now we move on, yeah. All right. Now here, when you look at the how can I say it? the response of David, having seen what God has done for him, and this is verse 3 and verse 4. Lord, what is man that you take knowledge of him? O the Son of Man, that you are mindful of him. Man is like a breath, his days are like a passing. It's quite unimaginable. You know why I say this? Yeah? Because if you were in the shoe of David and God have given you everything, right? He has exalted you and he has helped you subdue your people under you, what would you say? In many cases, I would say, if not all, people would become proud. Is it not so? Now I'm given power. But you find that he was able to see what? To see the great work of God in him. And he was able to see that, whatever he has achieved actually is from God. You get what I'm saying, right? And this is so precious, yeah. All right. Now, I think to remain godly, to remain acceptable in the sight of God, to curb, the desire of boastfulness, yeah. We have to follow the example of David. We must be able to see that everything that we have today is from God. Now, the fact that we are able to serve is from God. In the future, when you are made pastors of the church, and you find that this position is from God, then you will be what? You keep yourself very humble. You will not compete with others. You will not complain so much. You will always, stay. How can I say it? Stay upright and stay correct in your mind. Okay. Now, and verse 4 is, a man is like a breath, his days are like passing shadow. When you are, I'm not sure, just a funny question I want to ask. If next time when you are ordained, on the day of your ordination, would you think about verse 4? Probably in your mind, you say, oh, you see, these are the plan that I have, plan A, plan B, plan C, and these are the things that I want to do for God, for the church of God. Now, I think we can put that aside. You know what I'm saying? What we should think about is verse 3 and verse 4. All right, so very, we say, healthy mindset, yeah. That this who David has, Okay, now verse 5. Verse 5, yeah. Now bow down your heavens, O Lord, and come down, touch the mountain, and they shall smoke. That's talking about the greatness of God. Yeah? Flash forth lightning and scatter them, shoot out your arrows and destroy them. Now obviously, here is talking about the problem that he was facing. I have highlighted to you already in this chapter, because it's stated twice. Now here he's asking, what is that? God, to rescue him and deliver him out of great water from the hands of foreigners. Okay. Now again, I said, yeah, if this is the case, yeah, in 2 Samuel chapter 2, then you can see that he went about conquering and to conquer. Eventually managed to drive out the inhabitants in Jerusalem and to dwell in the stronghold, and make a city for himself. And he realized that all this must be attributed to the work of God. Okay. And so I think it's so In Second Samuel, like he defeated so many different foreigners, all right, like the Philistines, and then what is that? He drove out the Canaanites, the Jebusite, the inhabitant of the land, because at the time, he said, "You should not come here. We will repel you." Right? They're thinking David cannot come in here, but God helped David to subdue. Okay. Now, again, it's interesting to note why did he include the foreigners twice, asking God to help him to come out from the hands of the foreigners. And it's quite intriguing in a way. Right? What is the purpose we are? Okay. All right. I guess we'll continue later. We'll take a break.